And so he's had a traditional career in technology, and so many of his positions for programmers. He's been an architect, CEO, architect to CEO, software designer, blah, blah, but also an entrepreneur all this time. And so somebody who's had all those different fields and different experiences has got to have some interesting stories to tell. So he's here to tell you how to follow your passion. So without further ado, Mr. Doc List, let's give it up. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I was telling Paul, the first time I spoke to, actually the only other time I spoke to Launchpad was probably around 2002 or 3. Kathy was relatively new at running it, and I don't even remember how I got connected with the organization. But I came along, and I was standing outside. It was up north at some meeting place, and I was wearing a short-sleeved shirt. It was shorter than this, and my tattoo was showing underneath the sleeve. And a woman came up to me and said, "Oh, what is it?" And I said, "Well, it's a dragon." She said, "Can I see?" And I said, "Well, it goes up here and onto my chest. How about after I speak? Because I'd have to take off my shirt to show you my tattoo." And so I gave my talk. And about halfway through the talk, I was talking about something, and I went off on a tangent. And I'll tell you right now, I live in a world of shiny objects. And then there's the squirrels that chase the shiny objects. So occasionally I forget where I was. And I said, and about 10 minutes into this, whatever I was talking about, I said, "Does anybody remember how I got here?" And everybody said no, and I just kept going. I got to the end of the talk, which, by the way, was recorded on VHS tape. And I was all done, and people leaving the room, the camera's still running, and this nice woman said, Doc, you promised." And so I proceeded to take my shirt off. And that was recorded on the video. My mother came to visit about 2 weeks later, and neither my mother nor my wife had ever seen me speak in public. And I had received a copy of the tape by then. And so we played the tape, and about halfway through, I got to that place where I went off on the tangent. And much to my mother's chagrin, I went, "Oh, that's what I was talking about." And we got to the end of the tape where I took my shirt off, and she turned to me very quietly and said, "You're not going to do that every time you speak, are you?" I said, "Only if people ask." So I'm not taking my shirt off today. I'm just warning you now. I have had an interesting career, and it has, on the one hand, gone in a straight line, because I was in tech from '79 until now. I still work as a consultant. Any of you familiar with Agile software development? Yes. Okay, I do training and coaching. I'm reasonably well known in the community. I'm a track chair for the big Agile conference in the summer. Again, I've spoken at the Agile conference every year since 2007. I love it. I feel very passionate about it, which relates to the topic here today. There are days where I'm going to teach a class, and I wake up and I go, "Oh, I don't want to teach the class. I'm tired." And then I get in the room, and I start talking, and I start sharing the concepts, because that's where I live. Is not in, I'm a good trainer. Let me say this, no false humility. Oh, no false humility. I am a good trainer. I've studied it, I work hard at it. But when I get going, it's about the concepts and the subtlety and the mind shift that happens when you learn something new that you can put into practice that will make your work more enjoyable, that will make your days more pleasant. And so I love it. And I get into them, and I put all the energy out. And at the end of the day, my wife knows, don't even bother to talk to me, because I got nothing left. I'm totally worn out. So I still have a career in the tech space, in IT, because I travel around the US, occasionally internationally, and I teach and coach and consult. I started out having no background whatsoever in software. I have a degree in psychology. I was halfway through my master's degree in industrial organizational psychology. And one weekend, my wife and I, who met, in case anybody's interested, I'm going to tell you whether you're interested or not, on Friday, November 1st, 1974. And in 1976, we got married, so we're celebrating 41 years in August. And about 1978, she was working for a temporary personnel agency. And she had been the receptionist and grown in various roles. And she was unhappy with where she was working. So we opened the Sunday newspaper. You remember those, right? We opened the Sunday newspaper to the want ads, and I'm looking through the P's for personnel. And down at the bottom of the page is an ad for programmer analyst. And it effectively said, if you can walk and chew gum at the same time and you can add reasonably well, we want to talk to you. It was Control Data Corporation. And I said, what the hell, that's me. And I sent in an application, and I got one response and then heard nothing for weeks. And about 6 or 8 weeks later, I get a call from a guy named Ken. And Ken says, are you still interested? Now, at that time, I was working for a small car insurance company in San Francisco in the Pyramid. You guys know the Pyramid building? Right? Small insurance company. It was a mind-numbing job. It was one I had just fallen into. I was a claims examiner. Oh, it was so thrilling. And this guy said, are you interested? And I said, yes. And he said, can you come to San Jose tomorrow? I said, no. Because when you work for a little car insurance company like that, you don't just take a day off without any notice. He said, well then, can you come over to the Oakland Hills tomorrow? Because I'm staying with my sister-in-law who bought my house for me. Okay, and I did. And that was the beginning. And it turned out they were doing an experimental program where they were trying to hire people who had work experience, but no computer experience, which was me, and see if they would do better than hiring college graduates who had a CS degree, but no experience working. Of the 11 people they hired, I was the only one who succeeded. The others all drifted off after time. And that was the beginning of my career. And I discovered that I loved programming. I loved writing code. I loved exploring computer systems through the software side. I was working with a mentor, and when we had to do something new, he'd pick up the manual and he'd say, would you please figure out what we need to do and then just show me the examples? Because he didn't want to, and I'd take the freaking manual home and read it cover to cover. I have always loved working with computers. They make sense to me. I have a well-deserved reputation for being able to fix things by going like this. Decades. People say, this isn't working, and I walk up and I touch it, and it works. I cannot explain it. So anyway, so I've been in technology. As Shannon said in my introduction, I have been a coder, I have been a tester, I have been a designer, an architect, a manager in various roles. I have owned and run my own consulting company. I have worked for 7 or 8 startups, including several here in Austin. I'm too tired to do real work anymore. That's why I'm a consultant. Along the way, back in the early 60s, my brother and I grew up in an apartment with our mother in Manhattan, in New York City. And my brother and I were both into photography. So in case you're wondering why I'm wearing a shirt that says Doc List Photographer, it's because I've been doing photography since I was about 14 years old. After I graduated from college, moved to San Francisco, met my wife, we started making babies, and I stopped being active as a photographer and started just taking pictures. Snapshots of the kids. Had the earliest digital cameras. Any of you remember the Sony Mavicas when they first came out? You put a 5 1/4 inch floppy into them. Then they got sophisticated and it was a 3.5 inch. Right? Yeah, I had those. And then in 2007, when I was in career transition, so let me back up a little bit. In 2002, I got laid off from a startup here in Austin, and decided I didn't want to work for anybody else for a while. And I went off and started consulting, and I started doing things like career coaching, which I've done. I'm thinking about Toastmasters, because I also did Toastmasters. Slight tangent, there, shiny object coming. I was also a professional motivational speaker for a few years. Anyway, so I decided to be off on my own, and that's when I met Kathy and spoke to Launchpad for the first time, is somewhere in that 4-year period. And after that, it was time to go back to work for someone else because I wasn't making enough money as an independent. And I want to warn you about that because I'm going to come back to that idea of independence. So I was not making enough money. And my wife said, don't you think it might be good to have somebody else paying for our health care benefits, which were going to be, this is 2006. They were going to be costing me $1,800 a month. Still had 1 child at home of my 4. I have 4 children. They are now 35, 33, 31, and 27. They weren't back then, and I had 1 at home. And I said, yes, I think that's a marvelous idea, and I went out and got a job. And in 2007, I went to work for a small company, and that's where I got involved in Agile. And that year, my birthday's in August. It's August 25th, if you want to write it down. Debbie, my wife, said, what do you want for your birthday? And I said, I don't know, I'm thinking about a real camera or a flat screen TV, big flat screen TV. She handed me 8 $100 bills, no joke, and said, you go get what you want to get. She'd saved up for quite a, because we didn't have a whole lot of money, but she'd been saving up, and she said, go get what you want. I learned afterwards that she was voting for the TV. Needless to say, not only did I get the camera, I spent, about $1,300 before I was done. And that reignited my passion for photography. So today I have 2 parallel careers. I work part-time, and when I say part-time, I have 2 clients in Atlanta. I have a partnership with a company in Minnesota. I work about 7 to 10 days a month at the most, and that's enough, fortunately for me, to survive nicely without having to give up my lifestyle, because I like buying stuff and I like eating well. And then the rest of the time I'm spending on photography. And as of 4 years ago, loosely 4.5 years ago, I became a professional photographer. When my wife gave me that money and I bought that camera, I set out to learn. And I immersed myself completely. And I've gone to, there's an event called the Texas School of Professional Photography, which was last week, which is where I was. There's the Professional Photographers of America, which has a convention every year. Precision Camera here in Austin does a learning event every year called Precision Camera University, which is 3 days. I've done everything. I've done online things. When I'm at the gym on the treadmill, I'm watching YouTube videos about how to edit in Photoshop or how to do a better job of photography, because it just is the thing that feeds my soul. All right, that's enough about me. Okay, there's never enough about me. But for now, by the way, I have a philosophy of life about owning responsibility for your own feelings and your own behavior, and it's called, It's All About Me. And I registered the trademark. So if you ever see like the little ribbons they put on badges at conferences and stuff, and you see one that says It's All About Me, tell me please, because they owe me money. Okay, so today is about passion and how passion plays into your career. And I'm not going to say job or job search. It may. There's nothing wrong with jobs. I've had jobs. I've had many jobs. I've had more than most. I've had probably 15 jobs since I graduated from college. And I mean real jobs, not like summer things or so forth. Real jobs. But a lot of that is because I work for startups. And the startups would fail, and I'd get laid off, and I'd go find another one. I'm one of those weird people that thrives on change and is okay with uncertainty. The longest I've ever been unemployed, whether it was by my choice or someone else's, is about 3 months. It may be because my ego is so large that I walk into every situation assuming they're going to love me and hire me. And eventually it pays off. I don't even remember when it was, but it's about that same time period when I was independent, from 2002 to 2006. A friend of mine here in Austin, we had worked together at a startup previously, and she had become a career coach, career counselor, and was building a whole business around this, and she wanted to develop some training. And she said to me, will you help me develop the training? Which meant, will you please write the training for me? So I did, and then I got certified in her system. And in that process, made an even greater study of how people communicate, how they represent themselves, things like Toastmasters, which, as I said, I did. I think it's fantastic. It teaches you how not to say, I helped the club get started at UT in the business school, and I still have a friend from that group, and this one friend is the one who said to me one day, he said, Doc, how do you stop saying, I said, you catch it before it comes out of your mouth. You slow down, you listen to what you're about to say, and then you say it. It's a remarkable thing. Because we get excited, or we get nervous, and then the words are coming out, and the thing about or 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 they're all control techniques. And the reason I say they're control techniques is as long as I'm making noise, you can't talk. Right? And many of us get nervous that if we stop and we haven't completely finished a thought, somebody else is going to jump in, right? And therefore we say stuff just to fill the space. I made myself slow down. I got a lot to say. You've probably figured that out already. And I think it's incredibly valuable. But I made myself slow down. I made myself give other people a chance to speak, which was a big dramatic change for me. Okay, so passion. Oh my goodness. All right, I want you to get in groups of 3 or 4. So get close to other people, not too close. There's rules. Get close to some other people. I want you to get in a group of 3 or 4, whatever suits you. And what I'd like you to do is amongst that small group, talk about what are the things that really motivate you, that you feel, if not passion, that make you feel excited or you feel enjoyment about. We're going to leave out the stuff that happens behind closed doors in the dark. Well, it might not be dark for all I know. But talk about the stuff in life. I'm not talking about work specifically. I'm talking about the stuff, whether it's baking or, for me, photography or riding a bicycle. Whatever it is that you do in life that makes you feel good. All right? We're going to take just a few minutes to talk about that. Because we do a lot of that. Okay, so I got 2 questions for you. First, how many of you had trouble coming up with something to talk about? Okay, a couple. Yeah, all right. At the beginning of the classes, sometimes when I ask people to introduce themselves, I'll say, and after you say what your name is and your role is and how long you've been here, say something interesting about yourself. And it shocks me how many people say, I can't think of anything interesting about myself. It makes me sad. Because we all have interesting things about ourselves. Okay, now, I want some volunteers to tell me what you heard from other people about what spurs their passion, what inspires them. Yes, sir.
Well, my 3 friends were all talking about how much they enjoy travel.
Cool.
And more specifically, traveling, cruises, ship cruises.
Good.
And there was a lot of passion there.
Cool. Thank you. Who else? Yes, sir.
My friend here talked about she likes running.
She likes running.
But we
Cool.
talked too much.
I think you're insane, but cool.
We talked so much from other times, we didn't have a chance to say anything.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
My compatriots here talked about one was passionate about his family, and the other was passionate about teaching.
Family and teaching. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
We were very diverse. I love to travel and study foreign languages. My friends here love to read sci-fi and fantasy. And this gentleman here is an outdoorsman. He loves to hike and bike and run marathons.
Cool. Also insane, but cool. All right. Now, yes, sir.
One of the things I noticed is that it wasn't superficial, it was deeply personal there.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So here's a little insight for you about interviewing, because again, I'm certified as a career something or other, career coach, career counselor, something. But I've also interviewed for more jobs than most people, and have interviewed more people looking for jobs than most people. I have several mantras. Ask as much as you answer, listen as much as you talk. Ask as much as you answer and listen as much as you talk. So for those of you who were sharing, did it feel good to have somebody interested in what you were interested in? Okay. We get caught up sometimes in our own passions, our own interests, and I'm one of the most guilty of this. We forget to ask the other person about them. When you're looking for a job, it's amazing how effective it is to ask the other person questions. They can be business questions, it doesn't matter, but it can be questions about them. Because in a lot of cases, I've had people come to me as interviewees and talk for 45 minutes. About 10 minutes in, I'd already decided. I should have cut it off then, but I didn't because they never stopped long enough for me to say, I'm sorry, I'm done with you. Yes, ma'am.
When I was interviewing for a job last month, I went and looked up the folks on LinkedIn, and I noticed one of the people had gone to the Fashion Institute, and now she's in an IT marketing role. So I went to look for things to ask about them for the interview, just to sort of turn the conversation around.
Yeah, very good. There's something remarkable about showing interest in other people, and how that. So, oh man, if you've read studies on interviewing and the effectiveness of interviewing and the usefulness of interviewing, the studies all show that interviewing is the least effective way to show whether someone will be successful in a job. So what's the interview for?
See if you're a good fit.
See if you're a good fit socially, right? Personally, do I want to work with this person? And unfortunately, what happens in a lot of situations is they throw people into interview who have no skill, no knowledge in interviewing, and they ask all these challenging, difficult, technical questions. That happened to me. When I came to Austin, I came from Silicon Valley. I was living in Sunnyvale, and came here to interview with PC Order. Any of you remember PC Order? Spun off from Trilogy. I started at 7:30 a.m., which was 5:30 a.m. my time. Interviewed with 7 or 8 people through the course of the day. One of them took me to lunch. The last guy of the day said, do you know what a soma cube is? Do you guys know what a soma cube is? A puzzle? It breaks into, is it 7 pieces? And you have to put them back together into a cube, and each piece has 3 or 4 cubes in it. I said, sure, I know what a soma cube is. He said, good, how would you solve it programmatically? I'd already been going for 11 hours at that point. I have no idea what value this served. Now, he and I are still friends, in spite of the fact that he asked me what I thought was a ridiculous question. And I solved it, because I'm brilliant. The value of interviewing is simply to get to know someone, to get to know something about their attitudes, get to know something about how they might fit. As somebody said, are they a fit, right? The most effective way to see whether someone will be successful in a job, do you know what it is? Almost. Almost. You're very close. Have them do the job. So my wife is a dog groomer. You want to be hired as a dog groomer, you go to a shop and they have you spend half a day or a day there grooming dogs. Because you can answer all the questions perfectly, but until you get a scissors or a clipper in your hand and somebody's beloved dog on the table, we don't know if you're any good. I worked for ThoughtWorks. Any of you familiar with ThoughtWorks? International consultancy. It's now up to about 3,000 people. I spent 3 years there. When they interview developers, they bring them in and they say, write code. First they write code at home. They do katas. Then they bring them in and they sit them down and they say, I'll sit with you. We'll pair together and we'll write code. Because that's the only way I can see if you know what you're doing. Because if you send me code, and this has really happened, it could be somebody else's code. This happened with one of the interviewers where he said, this is my code. I don't know where you found it, because it might have been open source or something. This is my code. Okay, so when you get into these situations, now the question is, how do you bring passion? How do you bring some confidence? How do you bring the stuff that matters to you into it? So if you understand something about the interviewer, and I applaud, who was it that said you looked them up on LinkedIn, right? By the way, how many of you are on LinkedIn? Have you ever noticed that you actually have a number? Most of you have numbers that are 7 or 8 or 9 digits. Mine's 5. I'm in the first 1%. I'm actually in the first 0.1%. I've been on there forever, which is why I don't remember how many jobs I've had, but they're all on LinkedIn. It's too many. Learning something about the person and then engaging them as a person. How many of you find yourselves sort of freezing up in an interview or feeling very stiff and like you have to be formal and you have to be right about everything? Give it up. Just give it up. The person you're talking to is a person. The first thing you have to do is connect with them, and one of the ways you do that is this question about what are their interests, what are your interests. Now, I'm not saying you spend the whole time talking about going on cruises or hiking the Appalachian Trail or photography. On the other hand, the experiences you've had in the areas in which you feel passion will bring life to the conversation. And I'll tell you what, as an interviewer, there's nothing harder than somebody who sits there and says, yeah, I worked there for 2 years. It's like, oh my God, be a person. Come to life. So tap into those passions and get to know the other person, because it's an interesting thing. I've always told people when you interview, say we. Not how do you do this, how do we do this? Because you've now started to establish a connection. It's subtle. That psychology stuff. Okay? But as soon as I say we, so how do we deal with when we have a situation in which blah, 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 right? The interviewer may or may not perceive it, but what's happening is I'm becoming part of their organization. If you talk and don't listen, they are going to disconnect. So how do you get them to talk? Well, one of the things you can say is, I'm sorry, but I love doing photography, and I noticed you have some photographs on the wall. Did you take these? Is that your family? I do this stuff. Right in the middle of a deep technical conversation, I'll say, because squirrels and shiny objects, right? It's like, that's a beautiful photograph. You take that one? And the person on the other end will have one of two reactions. What the hell is wrong with you? Or they will respond to me showing interest in them and their possessions, their hobbies, their family, whatever it is. Now, I know we all feel like going into job search, going into interviews, we're supposed to be professional and we're supposed to show how brilliant we are and how knowledgeable we are and so forth. Yeah, but not so much. Because if they don't like you, if they don't respond to you, they don't have to want to be your best friend, but if they don't connect to you, I don't know about you, but I have not hired people, even though they were brilliant or skilled or talented, because I didn't want to work with them. Because I didn't feel rapport with them. So part of your job then is to bring that, and that's why I wanted you to have this conversation, because none of you shut up. I said talk about the things that you feel passionate about. Oh my God, I had to get your attention. Right? Well, you're them. Get them talking about them. Now, along the way, you can work in stuff about you. And you can work in stuff about the job, but you're breaking down those barriers that are preventing you from connecting. I want to take this in a slightly different, well, no, it's a totally different direction. It's not a squirrel, it's not a shiny object, it's just a different direction. There was a road sign that said, Doc, go this way now. I have had my share of, if you will, regular jobs, where I've been an employee, I got a paycheck, I got benefits. I've been very fortunate in that I enjoyed most of them. They also didn't last all that long because I worked at so many startups. The longest I've ever been employed was my own company, and that was 8 years. The next longest is my first job at Control Data, which was 5, and after that, it goes down. And the average is probably around 18 months or 2 years. Not by choice, because I went to everyone thinking, this will be my home, I'll stay here forever. And then they went belly up, or they had the layoffs, or whatever it was, and I'm okay with that. And fortunately for me, that has made me okay with that. I was working for a small company here in Austin up until February. I worked for them for about 1.5 years. And I said, you know what, I just don't want to be an employee anymore. Now this is not for everybody. But I said, I just don't want to be an employee anymore. I love you guys, and I love the work I'm doing, but you know, all that other stuff that goes with being an employee, all the forms and the reporting and the monthly meetings and the weekly meetings, I don't want any of that. I would like to go now, please. And they said, okay. And by the way, you know those 2 clients in Atlanta that came here to you, because I'd worked with them before, and they'd come to the company. They hadn't come to the company, they'd come to me. But I play by the rules, right? And they come to me while I was working for this company, brought them to the company. They said, you can take those 2 clients with you. Yes. And I went off on my own again. The thing about passion is I find that a lot of people go to work and it's work. And that's all it is. I spent 1.5 years working with Caterpillar Electronics in Peoria, Illinois. The best thing about Peoria, Illinois is leaving it. It's a very nice white bread place. Yeah, there's not much to it. There's some nice people there, but nothing exciting. And I tried to be open-minded and find something fascinating. I couldn't. Except there's one seafood restaurant on the river. That was worth going to. There are people who have worked there because in Peoria, Illinois, there's Caterpillar. They don't look at this stuff. And they've been there their whole careers. The guy I was working with went there as an intern during college, went back, finished college, and then went back and got a job at Caterpillar, and has been there since. He's been there now 33, 34 years. There are people who are 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation employees of Caterpillar. I've got a friend who he's an agile coach at Caterpillar, and he's thinking about leaving, but to leave, he's got to move. And he's got a wife and children, because there's nowhere else to go and work in Peoria, okay? But for most of the people there, it's a job. You know, the last job I had like that was when I worked at the car insurance company, I'm happy to say. Go in the morning and basically shut down all the critical deep thinking parts of your brain and you just do the job all day. And then you go home and you come back to life. At least that's how it was for me. So here's the challenge for you, is we had this brief conversation about passion. Now you're going to have another conversation. If I had complete freedom to do whatever I want, but have to earn a living, because I still have to earn a living, how would I engage that topic about which I was speaking earlier, about which I feel passion, or I feel some excitement? How would I do something? What would that look like? I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes, because I want you to really have a deep conversation about this. Now, you may not all get a chance to go. I'll try and remind you every couple minutes that it's been a couple minutes, so that maybe you can switch up. Have this conversation about what would that look like? How would I turn the thing I love, or things I love, except my family. You can't rent out your family, I'm sorry. Into some kind of income stream. Okay? Start now, 10 minutes. Let's hear some of the ideas that came out. Sharing time.
So Chad over here works on it's air conditioning systems, designs air conditioning systems for large buildings, and he has a real desire not to do it, but more to be a teacher and a mentor, and he's trying to figure out how to do that and earn the same kind of living.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Did you come up with any interesting ideas while you were talking?
Well, I just...
Because that was only the first 12 seconds of your conversation. So.
Right. I just started looking around and found out that at my son's high school, they're getting ready to start a program like that where they're going to teach not only high school students...
Do you love
but also,
teaching?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's an important element of what I asked you to talk about, right? Yeah, and I get that, and John and I were just talking about that, how much fun it is to get in front of a group and start to see the change happening and the learning happening, and that's what I live for. Yeah.
Light bulb going on.
Yep. Very good. Thank you. Is over here your last name, or just kidding? Okay, I thought that was hysterical, but who else wants to share? By the way, the way this works is I don't give up. So what's that?
About everything these days is becoming automated. Jobs that we all used to have,
Yep.
a lot of times nowadays have been replaced by some automated object. Google Home will be taking all of our jobs soon. So he was talking about learning how to animate or automate things for people.
Okay, so while you're looking at me,
Yes.
what's his name?
Oh,
Okay, good.
isn't it?
Just checking, because I didn't hear it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So that was my point.
Yeah. He was saying.
So taking that and turning that into job opportunities.
Huh. And have you any thoughts about that? Any of you? What those job opportunities might be? So are we talking about sort of home automation particularly? Yeah. Yeah. And do you have experience in that, or a passion for that, or?
It's a passion right now. I've done scripting in other areas of my IT career before, so it's something new. I'm learning scripting languages to do home automation.
So you're saying learning scripting languages to do home automation. Okay, good. Have any of you seen, I just saw a post this morning. Do you guys know who Eric Ries is, R-I-E-S? He wrote the book, my brain just went blank, Lean Startup, based on lean manufacturing and lean software, and the idea being how do you do a startup in ways that embrace the agile and lean mindset, so you minimize your investment, you maximize the information and the learning you do. Well, he has just put up something called Resist. I'm not going to get into a political conversation. I'm just saying he put up something where you send a message to a text number, and it will send faxes to your senators, and once you've sent a couple, it'll then offer you the opportunity to send faxes to your representatives. It doesn't care what it's about, okay? It's just, but they put something together, right? And talk about some automation. Their problem is that their servers got overloaded in the first day. Because he posted something and said, yeah, our first day, 10,000 faxes got sent. They might or might not be related to our current administration. I don't know. But, right, so he looked and saw a need and he built something. Years ago, I was a Herbalife distributor. Okay, network marketing. I've written a book on network marketing because I went, well, I get how it's done. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. But I tried it for a while, and then I realized Herbalife is built on testimonials, testimonial marketing, right? Everything they do is, oh, you know what? You want to get better in the gym. Let me tell you a story about the guy who blah, 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 right? And you want to lose weight. Let me tell you a story about the woman who blah, 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 right? All built on testimonial marketing. I collected those testimonials because you'd have to write to the people in your network and say, anybody have one about Crohn's disease? Right? So I started collecting them. I built a website. I turned it into a subscription website. And it started generating $40,000, $50,000 a year.
Nice.
Because it was so much easier for people. So in that realm of here's something I'm interested in, yes, take your passion. It costs you nothing to begin. That's the point of this. Anybody else want to share?
I actually just wanted to add to what you said about resistance.
Sure.
ResistBot.
ResistBot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I admit I've never before written to my senators. I will now be writing to them almost every day. And then my congressman, and then whatever else it'll give me. Who else wants to share? And just in case you haven't figured it out, it's going to be kind of quiet until somebody responds. Yes, ma'am.
So for me, left to my own devices, if I could make the same living, I would be a food, wine, and travel writer. So, and actually that's something I'm trying to figure out how to do when I retire. So, like setting up a blog and doing some other things.
So here's my question for you. Why do you have to wait until you retire?
Well, I don't have to wait for, I do for full time because I'm trying to save.
No, I understand that. So a lot of this stuff, in Agile we talk about the what is it, the perfect is the enemy of the good is the enemy of the perfect, whichever one it is, right? I'm the same way. I want to have everything figured out, in place, ready to go before I ever start. Then I want to have a plan for retirement. Well, you know what? I've been doing photography avidly, actively, as many hours as I can squeeze out of each day. I would be sitting at my computer right now in Photoshop if I wasn't here speaking to you. Because it gives me joy all the time. Go look at my website, doclistphotography.com. I have 2 other projects I'm working on. I got stuff going on all the time. If I waited until I have everything in place, I would not have earned a penny yet because I'd have to have it all. And that is my nature. I have to know exactly the right prices. I have to know what products to offer. No. And that's, by the way, that's what Eric Ries's book, Lean Startup, talks about to a certain extent. Try stuff. Try it now. What if you started writing about restaurants, let's just say food, okay, just keep it simple, and you went to some publications and said, maybe you've done that, maybe you haven't, I don't know, right?
I'm doing it on Yelp right now, and that's
Which means you're doing it for free to get a reputation.
It's getting me good contacts
Yeah.
for like food bloggers and things
Yep.
like that.
And that's where, so some of you have ideas, but you think you have to wait until you've figured it all out. Now, here's the nice thing. I make a nice 6-figure income. I have for years. I was hoping that over the years it'd get to a 7-figure income. Didn't make it yet. But I'm also doing photography at the same time. So while I was a full-time employee at this previous company, when they went to hire me, I said no. I was independent at that time also. I said no, I don't want a job. They said, oh, we really would like to have you come work with us. And they were friends of mine. I said no. They said, and you can spend, quarter to a third of your time doing photography, and you'll still get the same salary and benefits. I said yes. Right? And I got to spend time. I got to go off to all these events and schools and stuff, and that was my deal. And then I had a different deal, and then I left because I realized I just didn't want to be an employee. But the idea being, it's up to you to start something, right? I have friends who have done this, and you hear the success stories, and you think, wow, they must have had it all figured out and had lots of money to get there. No. Overnight successes usually take a long time. Right? We all know that. Because you crank away and you grind away, and then something happens. You may not be an overnight success, but you might find that you go from making a few bucks a week to a few $100 a week to a few $1,000, and all of a sudden you look down and you go, whoa, I can quit my job, do this all the time. Tap into your passion for that. Now, some of you may have passions that don't translate into making money. And then you have to do a little bit of lateral thinking, right? My wife loves pets. She was working as she was a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. Right? Our first child was born in 81. She went back to work in 2001, to working for someone else. To be fair, because we have 4 children. She wasn't exactly sitting around idle all that time. Our youngest was 11, 12 when she went to get a job. And she lucked into a job working for a veterinarian. My wife, there's several things in life she loves. Children, being pregnant, pets. So she lucked into a job with one of those. She has 3 dogs, 3 birds, and 1 fish. I have no pets. I just live in their house. But she lucked into a job that happened to tap into her passion. She will tell you she doesn't think she's the smartest, the most skilled, that it takes her a while to learn this stuff. But she became their most valuable employee because she was willing to figure out whatever it took. She redid their closets. She figured out the software because she was willing to put in the effort. Now, she was there for 10 years, and she'd still be there if the guy who originally owned the business and hired her hadn't brought in a partner who she could not stand at all. So she quit that, went to work at Petco for a year, which was mind-numbing. And then she decided she wanted to be a dog groomer, and we sent her off. I sent her off to dog grooming school in Arlington, and she came back and she was a dog groomer for a few years. Got laid off from a recent job, and our children have finally, thankfully, figured out how to make grandchildren. And we have our first granddaughter, and she's doing daycare for our granddaughter. She's getting my son and daughter-in-law are paying her a nominal rate, enough to pay for her car lease. That's all she wanted. But this is all because I have encouraged her to look for the things that make her feel good. Now, I have a mantra, another mantra. I have a whole lot of them. There's a truck full of them outside. But one of them is do something about it or shut them up. And she'd come home from the veterinary clinic when it was bad for her. And she'd gripe and gripe. And I'd listen day after day. Any of you read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Okay, and Gray talks about men going into their cave and women wanting to express themselves. And I read the book and I embraced it. And so I learned to listen to my wife. And to say, do you want me to do anything about this or do you just want me to listen? And she'll say, I just want you to listen. And I did for a while, a long while. I said, okay, look, I can only take so much of this. Either do something to make a change or stop talking to me. And just accept that you've made a decision to live in that environment. Okay, because it's up to you to make change. Which she did. She accepted that from me. And a year later, she had left. She quit 3 times. It took 3 times to stick. The first time, the guy who'd hired her said, I hired you when you didn't know anything, and I let you be a veterinary technician. And she said, oh, okay. And the second time, he said, would you please stay? And she said, okay. And the third time, he said, please. And she said, no freaking way. A year later, her friend who she'd worked with was still there. And Debbie said, and I told her to do something about it or shut up. So, you have to start. You have to do stuff. You have to take these things that excite you and figure out how you can incorporate that into what you do into your life. I'm not saying that if you're between jobs right now and you need a healthy 5 or 6 figure income to pay your mortgage and your bills and so forth, that you should just stop and say, I'm going to go be a house sitter. It's like, okay, maybe not. On the other hand, if you want to have choices, you've got to start doing stuff. You've got to start experimenting, playing with things while, now, if you're working, even better, because you have an income and you can experiment. But you know what? I embrace the mantra that looking for a job is a job. On the other hand, you're not doing it 24 hours a day. When I wrote this book about network marketing, and then I wrote another book, no big deal. They're little short things that they were in my head, I had to get them out. I set aside an hour a day. When I had this job, I set aside time during the week and weekends to work on photography. Because unless you commit to that, at best it's a good hobby, or it's a little bit of fun. If you like traveling, if you like food and you like photography and you like bicycling or running or whatever it is, well, that's nice. But if you want to have choices, start experimenting. Write some scripts, you know. Can you afford to buy the new Google device or the Amazon Echo? Or I just read an article that said kitchen automation is the thing that's lagging the most. Our living rooms are automated. I have an Amazon Echo. And I say, Alexa, turn all the lights on. And she does. One of my children came over and she said, you have a robot? It's like, yes, I do. And she turns the lights on and turns the lights off and tells me what the weather is and lets me shop for stuff. Right? You can experiment. You can learn. I'm guessing you've started because you're nodding at me. I'll just interpret it whatever way I want. Just keep nodding. Okay. There is always a way to take what moves you and do something with it. Now, I've talked already about engaging your passion in interviewing and remembering what it felt like here when I said talk to some other people about your passions. Remember what it felt like to have people interested in you and to be interested in other people. And while you're looking for a job, take that same mindset, that same interest and engagement with you. Interviewing is not supposed to be a hostile environment. It's up to you as much as it is up to the interviewer. If you do not interview the interviewer, you have missed a bet and you've probably failed. So like I said, I had one guy, this is years ago, but here in Austin, who literally talked at me for 45 minutes. At no point did he stop and ask me a question. I said, thank you very much, and as soon as he walked out, I tore up his resume, because I just didn't care. There was a guy I met here on Facebook, and lives here in Austin. I met him at a little local coffee shop, just to get to know him. And we sat down, and he had been in the Navy, and now he's a photographer, and I said, so tell me, how did you get from the Navy to being a photographer? And he talked at me for 55 minutes, and I said, I gotta go now. You will never see me again. I've gotten pretty direct and blunt in my older age. I'm 65, okay, and it's like, I don't have time for this. I said, you never showed any interest in me whatsoever. That's not a relationship. He said, well, it's your fault for asking me that question because there's no short answer to that question. I won't say the words that were in my head, but it's like, yes, there is a short answer to that. I left the Navy, I picked up a camera, became a photographer. Oh, look, that was less than 10 seconds. Showing interest in the other person is huge. They will come away feeling like they have a connection to you. So that's where you bring that sense of passion. Now, it's okay to say, I love that you, and let me tell you a little bit about what I love. Keep it short. Never talk for more than a minute or two. It's just like presenting or training. In the training world, there's a woman named Sharon Bowman who wrote the book Training from the Back of the Room. And she based her work on a guy named Dave Weiss, who wrote the book, The Accelerated Learning Handbook. All based on neuroscience. There's a book called Brain Rules by John Medina. All based on neuroscience. And what they found is the human brain, this is not personality, the human brain can't pay attention for more than 10 to 20 minutes. I've stretched you guys. But notice we took breaks for you to talk to each other. Right? Human brain can't pay attention for more than 10 to 20 minutes. Notice that on the news, on TV, all the little segments are very short. That's not just because we're Americans. Because that's how the brain works, right? You got to get food to the brain. That's oxygen. If you sit, the oxygen's all down here. Get up and move around. If you're in an interview, there's nothing that says you're nailed to the chair. Now, within reason, you can say, do you mind if I get up and move around a little bit? Because I just feel better. And they'll usually respond to that. Or you could say, can we go for a walk and talk? Now, that's one of the things I would do in a different room setup. I would have had you get up in your groups and walk around. It's a little challenging in this room. You would have had to leave, and then how do I get you back? Did I mention it's all about me? Okay, so bring all of that. Think about what it felt like. Yes, John?
So much of this has gone to, in high tech especially, to video interviews and phone interviews. How would you do something equivalent to, could we take a walk?
Well, you can't do that. I mean, but I'll stand up. You just need to tilt my screen, right? I mean, you can't do it all the time. But I do. I mean, I have my own Zoom account, which I pay for so that I get recordings and so forth. There's Skype, there's Hangouts and so forth. If somebody says to me, can we talk about this? I say, sure. You want to do Zoom or Google Hangout?
I was thinking more in terms of,
I know.
if you get up and go, if you get them to go for a walk, you've kind of changed the whole concept.
Put it on do it on your phone. You can walk and talk. And I've had not my own conversations, but I've actually had conference calls or events where there was somebody who couldn't be there and somebody else was holding the phone for them, and as we move around, they carry the phone. So you can do that.
You could ask, do you mind if I walk and talk?
Apparently that was a very important point because I got a musical accompaniment. So we have the two areas. One is when you're looking for a job, bringing your passion, which means bring your understanding that other people have passions too, into the situation. And the other is, how do you take your passion and use it to create something that will change your life in some way? It could be a little way, it could be a big way. Like I said, I built this website for Herbalife distributors, and all of a sudden I'm making 40 or 50 grand a year. And then I got bored with it and I started ignoring it and it shut down. Which I look back and I say, what the hell is wrong with you? That was like free money. That's my problem, is relatively speaking short attention span, which is why I'm amazed that I've been doing photography for as long as I have. Think about what you can do. Play with things. You can put up a website for nothing or virtually nothing. You can experiment with how to take money for things. You can experiment with selling things. Shopify and sell on Amazon. And there's all sorts of different ways if you have something to sell, which can even be a service. All sorts of possibilities. Get on Handy, get on Thumbtack. All sorts of possibilities. Don't be constrained by the tracks you've been on your whole life, your whole career, which is this is what I do, therefore this is what I have to do, and what I will always do. It's okay to say, how about if I try something I love and see what I can do to also make money at it, and then don't be afraid of actually trying to make money. Don't apologize for it. Don't regret it. Don't resign yourself. Try. Say, well, how do I get this from $10 a week to $100 a week to $1,000 a week? Because you may be able to figure it out. I live in a world like this, and this is why I'm here. This is the world I live in. I have one of my projects called the Austin Bodies Project, and it's nude fitness. And I started it 2 years ago because somebody, a friend of mine at the gym, a woman, said she wanted to do, would I photograph her to create something for her husband? And one of the inspiration images she sent me was from bodybuilding.com, and they have a series called Bodies of Work. And they're sponsored athletes, and it's nude. So no genitalia, no nipples on the women showing. It's about celebrating the body. And I said, would you like to do that? She said, well, not until I lose some of this body fat. She had about 6% body fat. It was ridiculous. But another woman wrote to me to do a fitness portfolio, fitness modeling portfolio. And I said, would you be interested? And she said, oh, yes, I've been thinking about that for years. And that's where it got started. And I did all these pictures, and I've got thousands of pictures. And I said, I want to do a book. I could have tried to do it myself, or I hired a designer, happens to be in the UK. He's finished designing the book. I paid for that. About to put up a Kickstarter. Who knows if I'll succeed or not? But if I don't try it, I absolutely will not. The quote that's attributed to Gretzky, right? You miss every shot you don't take. Give it a shot. If it costs money, it's Shark Tank, right? It's like, oh yes, we mortgaged our house and we spent our children's college funds, and that's what they wanted to do, because that's what's important.